I'm excited to welcome you to today's webinar, How to Find and Win Competitive Fellowships with Dr. Vicki Johnson, ProFellow founder. Today's webinar will be 1 hour, so we'll be ending at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And before I turn the webinar over to Vicki, I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping items. We will have time for Q&A, so please feel free to type your questions in the question box on your GoToWebinar dashboard. So any questions that you have for Vicki, you can type in there and we'll have a chance to ask her those. Also want to mention that there will be a short evaluation survey available at the end of today's webinar, so we encourage you to share your feedback with us. And before I turn it over to Vicki, I want to share a few upcoming programs with you. We will have webinars this semester through April 8th and hope you can attend some of those. And coming up tomorrow, we have LinkedIn for networking, career building, and the job search. That is from 1 to 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And then looking at next week, a great follow-up to the LinkedIn webinar is the networking, make your contacts count, which is really also a job search strategies webinar. So I encourage you to come to that. A great follow-up to LinkedIn on Tuesday, February 11th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. And then we have on Wednesday, February 12th, a Career Path Spotlight. And that is featuring one of our recent alums from the ALM Management Program, Katie Doran, and she is currently a project manager at Amazon. So if you want to learn about her career path, please join us for that. And then on Thursday, also next week, February 13th, from 1 to 2 p.m., we will have an employer information session, a virtual information session with Janssen Pharmaceuticals about their data science opportunities. So many more webinars to come this semester through April 8th. And I'll send out a link now to all of you in the chat just so that you can find out more information and register for those. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Vicki Johnson, and turn the webinar over to you. Thanks, Vicki.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Sounds great.
Good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for joining this presentation. I always love to work with the Harvard Extension School. And today I'm going to talk about how to find and win competitive fellowships. And if you're not quite sure what fellowships are, I will definitely go into detail about that. So first, I just want to start and introduce myself. Some people call me Dr. Johnson, but I like to go by Vicki, and I'm the founder and CEO of ProFellow. And we started the website back in 2011 to help people discover more funding opportunities like fellowships. So in my background, I've done 4 professional fellowships since I graduated from my undergraduate degree back in 2001. And so over the years, I did a number of professional fellowships in the field of government and policy, including a New York City Urban Fellowship in New York City government. I spent a little more than a year abroad in Germany on a German Chancellor Fellowship. I went on to do my master's, and then after my master's, I also did a Herbert Scoville Jr. Peace Fellowship, which was a 6-month fellowship in Washington, D.C. to work in a policy think tank. And then later, after other jobs and things that I was doing in Washington, I did a mid-career fellowship called the Ian Axford Fellowship in Public Policy in New Zealand, which was offered by Fulbright New Zealand. And I also got a full funding award to do my PhD in New Zealand. So I also talk quite a bit about funding for graduate school at the master's and doctoral level. So over the years before ProFellow existed, I was the person who was doing all this in-depth internet research to figure out where are these unique funding awards that help you to go abroad, to fund projects, to do research, to do writing, and all sorts of other interesting creative things. And nobody was creating a go-to source of information on these, so we decided that we would be the ones. So we founded ProFellow.com, and over the years, we've grown to be the world's leading online resource for information on professional and academic fellowships. The website itself is free to use, so when you get started, you can sign up for a free account, and we have a free database inside ProFellow where you can search more than 1,300 funding opportunities in all disciplines, all career levels, and also for people of any citizenship, any education background. So there's all sorts of great funding awards in the database. We also, if you're on our mailing list, you'll get content on application tips. We do lists of fellowships in certain disciplines. We talk about graduate school funding and all sorts of things. So be sure to get on the mailing list too if you want the content sent straight to your inbox. So let me get into what are fellowships. We call them short-term funded opportunities to do something exceptional. So there's a lot of awards out there that may or may not be called fellowship in name. They might not have the word fellowship or fellows in their title, but we call these funding awards for individuals fellowships if they meet these criteria. So first, fellowships are short-term because they have a definitive end date. Most fellowships are anywhere from a couple weeks in length to a couple years in length. A common length of period is about a year. They're also funded. So there is occasionally some things called fellowships that are not funded, or they're volunteer, or even that you have to pay for them. But on our website, we only list awards that have some sort of grant or stipend attached to it. And so they're all funding opportunities for any length of period, any length or opportunity, whatever it's offering, there's some funding attached. And then we also say that they're opportunities to do something exceptional. First, because they have a competitive application process. So these are merit-based awards. They're not financial aid. They're based on your potential as a scholar or a professional. And we say to do something exceptional because all fellowships offer unique professional and academic opportunities that you probably can't get through a normal job or even just your everyday kind of school experience. So you'll meet people in your industry, leaders in your industry. You'll get funding to do self-designed projects. Actually, that brings me right into the next slide of why apply to fellowships. So there's a couple different things that you might be able to do on a fellowship. First, you might be able to pursue a self-designed project or do research. So a couple of the fellowships that I did, such as the German Chancellor Fellowship and even my New Zealand Fellowship, I had the opportunity to propose a project that I wanted to do, and they essentially gave me the funding to go and independently work on that project in a foreign country. So some of those were more professional in nature, and then some of them were more geared toward research. But a fellowship, that's a really unique opportunity to have a lot of autonomy and work on something that relates to your studies or even just helps to advance your career. Or even if you're trying to do a project to set up a nonprofit or a social enterprise, these are really unique funding awards for individuals. They often also will give you high-level work experience in your industry. So whether you're trying to enter the job market as a recent graduate or even a graduate school graduate, a fellowship can be a great foot in the door into a certain industry because it's a competitive award. So you might be able to go work full-time for a year in a government agency, in a nonprofit, or even in a company or corporation. And what's great is that through the fellowship, because it's prestigious, you often get to meet leaders in your field. Sometimes there's a cohort experience. And some of the professional fellowships even have a learning aspect to it. You might be part of a curriculum or a leadership development panel. So it's a great opportunity to get that high-level experience that looks really good on your resume. Fellowships are also a unique opportunity to work or study abroad. So the two professional fellowships that I did, one was in Germany and one was in New Zealand, was a really great opportunity to work abroad. You know, really the only other alternatives to having a chance to live and work abroad would be through maybe getting a job abroad, which can be pretty challenging, or a study abroad, which may or may not be funded, or a volunteer opportunity. So the beauty of the fellowship is that the award will give you funding and it will help you with all the logistics of going abroad, giving you a network, helping you with visas, setting you up for success. And there's also a lot of awards if you're interested in doing a degree abroad or doing research abroad, there's awards for that as well. You can also, through fellowships, achieve funding for graduate school. So there's awards in the database that are for graduate study at the master's level or for doctoral study. And this might be funding that goes toward your tuition, or in most cases, it's also, it can be used for any kind of research that you're doing, whether that's for your thesis or your dissertation. There's also summer fellowships for enrolled graduate students. So if you're looking for a summer opportunity to get some professional experience, the fellowships are a great way to get almost like a paid internship. But if it's a fellowship, it's almost even more prestigious than the internship. And also, in all cases, you're going to broaden your professional network. So if you're getting a fellowship, whether professional or academic in nature, you're going to meet people, either scholars or leaders in your industry. And also, you get to meet other fellows. If you're in a cohort-based fellowship, all of these folks you should be linking with on places like LinkedIn and keeping in touch. That professional network is really what sets you up for success when you're going out into the job market. So now fellowships, they kind of fall into two main buckets. We call them first these professional fellowships, and they can function like full-time work placements, whether that's a short period or a long period, or they give you funding to work on a personal or self-designed project. So for people who want to be or are professional writers or journalists, there's sometimes grants that allow you to go out and do that work. There is summer fellowships, like I said, for students and even for professionals. So in general, they have a more professional nature to them. There's also academic fellowships, which will provide funding for graduate school or for research, whether you, and also, postdoctoral fellowships and fellowships for experienced scholars and researchers who have a PhD. So those kind of fall into the academic bucket. And then there's also lots of interesting opportunities that might be sort of straddling the two. Now, fellowships can be a little bit, they're different than jobs in the professional realm because their application criteria are actually more similar to applying to graduate school than they are to applying to a job. So many fellowship applications will ask you to include a resume or CV, transcripts if it's more academic in nature, reference letters or references. Sometimes you'll have to include a personal statement of, a couple paragraphs or a page. They may also require you to insert a project or research proposal if you're doing something like a self-designed project. You may also need to be in contact with a host institution during the application process. I had to do this with my German Chancellor Fellowship. I had to find a host in Germany that, if I won the award, would host me, provide me a desk, provide me a mentor, that sort of thing. In some cases, you'll have to do that. And then once you submit all of those documents, and if you make it to the finalist round, there will be individual and or group interviews. So it's a pretty intense process. And the other thing to know is that unlike jobs, often you're applying for the fellowship for a specific annual or biannual deadline, and you might not actually start the fellowship for a couple months to even up to a year after the deadline. So there's a very long timeline for one, getting your application together, but also, waiting to hear back and getting accepted. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about fellowships. It's always good to start looking early. So I'm going to start showing you around the ProFellow database. So this is a little shot of what it looks like. I'm going to switch over to the other screen here. This shows you the actual dynamic database here. Now, when you sign up on our homepage, or if you click the sign up button, you'll fill out a couple of fields of forms for your profile. Just so you know, there is personal data that you enter, like your education level and your disciplines, but we do not share your personal data with any third parties. We don't sell emails or sell your personal data. We only use that information, one, to help you better search this database, but also for us to track, what types of people are signing up so that we can email you new opportunities, or so that we can make sure that we're adding new opportunities for really popular types of fellowships. So once you fill out those forms, you'll come in here and you'll see, actually, you'll come in and you'll see that there's 1,305 funding awards right now, and we're adding new ones all the time. Those profile fields that you filled out, you can actually click profile filters here, and it will auto fill in some of the fields here, or you can just start and fill it in on your own, either way. Now, let me just explain some of the filters here, because actually, unfortunately, we don't have like a little, how to use this database video. We thought that the database is pretty intuitive, but it always can help to explain sort of what everything is. So here in the fellowship type, you can, we have kind of some main types. As I mentioned, if you're looking for a professional fellowship, which might be, after you graduate, you'll want to look for this. You can select the professional type to get all of the awards that are professional in nature. And you'll see about half of the awards are professional. If you're looking, and many of you might be looking for like a summer fellowship that might be professional in nature, we also have a category for summer fellowships. So these would be ones, and I should say these are based on the kind of the Northern Hemisphere, the June through August time frame. But this is the summer fellowship and most of these are for enrolled students, but you may also find that there's ones for professionals as well, like teachers and others who have that summer period off. Then we have graduate study. A lot of the awards in here are bucketed for people that are pursuing or want to pursue a master's degree. We also have doctoral study for people who are in or want to pursue a PhD or other type of doctoral degree. And then the other one we have, and we also have fellowships for undergraduate study. I think most of you are beyond that at this point, but you might know someone that would be interested in undergraduate study awards. And so these are less so for tuition-based awards, but more for if you're an undergraduate doing research or, a summer opportunity as an undergrad. So next is the discipline fields. Let me just put professional in so you can get some ideas here. Now, the discipline fields, we have I think there's about 10 here. And you'll notice these are very broad fields: education, social sciences, science, business. You can select, I would say, let's say you're working in public policy, the closest thing would be public service. If you're a journalist, the closest thing would be communications. So whatever fields that you're interested in or working in, think kind of more broadly, well, what would they be bucketed under here? But the good thing is you can also use a keyword search for more specific subdisciplines. So I'll show you how to use the keyword search in a second. For example, if you did want to find journalism, rather than you could pick communications, and then you could also put in a keyword search for journalism to find journalism-related fellowships. And that will bring up anything here where the word journalism is in the listing or in a tag. So very broad disciplines here. Same for if you were in economics or let's say you're in public health, I would choose medicine, health sciences, and then put public health here. For fellowship location, this again, very broad. These are basically continents. But if you're looking for something in the US, pick North America. But if you're looking for something abroad, you can pick these broader ones. And you can also skip right over this and pick a country. Let's say you want to do a period abroad or do some research in Germany. You can put the name of the country here. We also do cities. We try to tag it with all sorts of things. So these are fellowships that are in Chicago. Let's see Boston, since you guys are Harvard. Boston, there's things that are specifically in Boston. So you can do cities, you can do states in the keywords. So just keep that in mind. Citizenship requirement, I would say if you're a US citizen, put in United States, because that will help filter out ones that are not for US citizens. But likewise, let's say you are a non-US citizen, put in that and you'll find there's quite a few awards for international students in the US and also just people internationally from other citizenships. We do have a bit of a skew towards awards for US citizens just because we're a US-based organization, but like I said, there's a lot of awards in here for people of non-US citizenships. We also have this work experience filter. Now these are also, again, really broad, less than 5 years, 5 to 10, 10 plus. I would say actually leave this off because we only use this tag if awards have a specific either age experience requirement, age of requirement or work experience requirement. So if they say, for example, that you can only be up to age 40, we probably would have tagged it with less than 5 years and 5 to 10. But most awards actually do not have an age limit or age requirement. So just think about that and keep this open. But if you are, say, looking for, I just want to see awards for recent college graduates, pick less than 5 years because that'll help narrow it down. Or likewise, if you're like, I have more than 10 years of experience or I'm really experienced, do the 10 plus years. And that will help filter out all of those ones that are for recent graduates. There is kind of a myth that most fellowships are for recent graduates or young people. That is completely not true. There are a lot of awards in here for mid-career professionals, experienced professionals. And like I said, most of them don't have an age requirement, so there's no reason you can apply. If you noticed that the stipend is really, really low or something, it might be that they're trying to they expect it to be geared more toward recent graduates than people who are, have 20 years of work experience. But again, just here we've got, 200 results of professional fellowships for people with more than 10 years of experience. And there might even be more. If you kept this off and really took your time to search, there may be more. Now, for some of you, I don't know if this can work here. Shoshana, if they want to put in the chat some ideas for things that they're looking for, I can give you some ideas on some like keywords and even some secret keywords. I don't mean for them to be secret keywords, but we use a lot of tags to help people find certain types of awards. So if you have, an idea, I think if you put it in the chat, I could give you some ideas. But while I'm waiting for that, or I'm not sure if that can work, let me just show you some things. So let me clear this. Now, some of you are working you want to do social impact work. We kind of tag a lot of things with social impact when they have a social impact element to them. Maybe you're looking for something short-term that's less than 3 months. You can use the keyword short-term. There's even a couple of fellowships that are part-time in nature. This is less common, but there is some part-time fellowships. So you can use the keyword part-time. These will be for ones where they don't expect a full-time commitment. So this is an interesting one. We just added the Mortgage Accelerator Program. This is for a fellow to work 10 hours a month with a nonprofit organization to help them create impact. So it's just like an extra project and helpful to build your professional network or get experience on your resume. Some other great words, let's see. So like any discipline. So if you were working in architecture, you could put that in. If you are working in teaching, or even K through 12 teaching, let's say you're a teacher and you're getting your additional masters there. This is another interesting one. We just added the Project Kindle, looking for high school teachers and a fully funded kind of summer expedition experience. STEM is a big word we use a lot for those of you working in science, technology, engineering, and math. Urban planning. Now, if you're looking for something like mid-career, use the keyword mid-career with the little dash. Lots of things are tagged as mid-career. So it may or may not have been tagged with 10 plus years. Mid-career is kind of a weird word that's used in different ways. Some people think anything over age like 30 is mid-career. Others think over age 50 is mid-career. So there's kind of not like a real definition to it that's understood by everyone. But try mid-career. This means they're looking for people who have probably at least 10 years of work experience. So that's just some ideas using the keyword search. This is very powerful. And so, like I said, the keyword will bring up if that word is in the description of the fellowship, or if it's tagged, it'll be there. Oh, and I also want to mention too about bookmarking. So if you find a fellowship that sounds interesting, this is a pretty short description. You'll probably need to learn more. You can bookmark it here to your profile. When you do that, it'll show in your favorites when you go there. But also, if you're like, wait, I want to go to the website and kind of figure out a little bit more about this, click on the fellowship. And then over here, you can click go to website, and that'll take you to the website to learn more. I would strongly recommend that you go to the main fellowship website to make sure that, confirm the deadlines, confirm the eligibility requirements. If it's an interesting opportunity, don't rely completely on this, because sometimes this information goes out of date without us knowing. We try very hard to keep this up to date, but make sure to go to the website. You'll also notice here in the deadline field that sometimes it'll say confirmed. That means we have confirmed it's definitely that date. If it says estimated, that means we estimated it based on last year's application. So it could actually be a completely different deadline this year. And sometimes we even miss the estimated deadline. So if you come to a website like this, if they happen to have an email list, if they say, hey, sign up to get announcements, I would encourage you to do that. Sign up for their newsletter so that you are, notified right away about when the fellowship is open again. Unfortunately, we don't have a feature here that is going to send you alerts about, oh, now this application's open. It's just a feature we don't yet have. But we do send a lot of upcoming deadlines and announcements through our mailing list. So make sure you get on the mailing list when you sign up. So let's get back to, I explained the database. It doesn't look like, let me see, were there chat messages? No, just from Shoshana. That's okay.
We did actually get a few people typing them in as questions.
Oh,
so
great.
I can
Okay.
read some of those.
That's
Yeah,
good.
off to you.
Great.
So we had a couple of people interested in sustainability.
Oh, that's a good keyword that is on that we use for sustainability. So there's at least 30 in here. And the other keyword I would recommend is just we tag environment on anything that's related to environmental conservation, policy, climate change. But yeah, you can use sustainability, but also use environment.
Great. And then we had someone putting in circular economy, another person putting in finance.
Circular economy, that might be economics. I don't know that we have circular. That might be a little too narrow. Wait, let's just try it. You never know. Circular economy. Ooh. Yeah, nothing like that. But I would say look under economics maybe. Think of like broader fields. What would that fall under? I'm not totally sure what circular economy is, but try that. And then finance too would be, there's definitely some things tagged with finance. So I would look in there. And these probably too would fall under either business or even liberal arts. So you can try those as disciplines.
Great. We had someone who said they're looking for a fellowship to sponsor an MBA degree.
Actually, we have some tagged with MBA. So you could do MBA. Some of these are for MBA students or funded MBA, but the other thing I would suggest is to select graduate study and then select just business. There's 59 results on here. So I would go through these and see. There's like an MBA fellowship. There might even also be some fully funded. I know like Cornell has a special program that is like a full funding award for their business school. So yeah, like this one, the Roy H. Park Leadership Fellows, 2-year full tuition fellowship for 25 Cornell Johnson students. So yeah, it's 59 results. I would suggest just going through each one.
Great. Do you want to take another one?
Sure, let's do one more, and then I can also do some at the end if there's time.
Sure. So organizational behavior consulting.
Organizational behavior. I wonder if that, actually, I'm not quite sure what that would fall under. But let's just, yeah, see, it's not coming up. That might be, I don't know if that would be under.
Could be under maybe psychology or business.
Yeah, psychology. I would look under psychology. There's a couple. I felt like we had more with psychology, unless, am I spelling it wrong? I did a degree in psychology, I should know. Yeah, you might need to do a broader search. And I should mention too that there's a lot of multidisciplinary awards that may not be specific to, say, organizational behavior or circular economy, or even specific to, say, economics. There could just be awards that are open to people in any field. In fact, we use, as best we can, disciplinary as a keyword to show awards that are open to people in all different fields. So in the description, it might not have your specific kind of keyword that you're looking for, but these are open to people in all disciplines. So I would also use that keyword multidisciplinary, so you can find things that are open to people in all sorts of different fields. Yeah, it's fun. Fool around, play around with it, but always think what other related keywords could this be? Because that might help you to find some gems in the database. So I'll go back because it's at the half hour. So let me get into the tips of applying. So here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is, like I said, there's 1,300 funding programs in the database, meaning that, and these aren't 1,300 individual awards. These are actually representing thousands and thousands of awards. Some programs are giving out, 25 awards a year. Some are giving out hundreds of awards a year. So there's like probably over $1 billion worth of funding, just within what's listed in the database. And we're adding more all the time. So there's tons of opportunities out there if you're willing to take the time to look for them. But the bad news is that they are competitive, and the application process can be time intensive. And also, unfortunately, having Harvard on your resume won't necessarily make you a shoo-in for the fellowship, because there's usually looking for something beyond just what have you accomplished up until now. but looking more for what are you going to accomplish in the future? What's your potential? And how do you fit in with this program? So let me tell you the 5 secrets of fellowship winners and going over their applications. Number 1, it's not about your goals. It's about the fellowship organization's goals. So all fellowships have some sort of social impact mission. They serve as a way of investing in people to further some other broader goal. So it could be that they want people to be doing research in climate change. It could be that they want more diversity in a certain industry. It could be that they're trying to revitalize a economically depressed community. There's some kind of broader goal, and they're investing in fellows as a way to achieve that goal. They're investing in people. So really, at the end of the day, although you do get prestige and skills and all sorts of great benefits that come out of the fellowship, it's not really about, giving you all these benefits. It's really about they want you to help them achieve their goals. So keep that in mind when you're applying so that you can tie in your application story to the mission. So to figure out what the mission of the program is, really, of course, review the website carefully. I mean, often they'll tell you exactly what their mission is. And don't just look at the fellowship page, but also look at the mission of the sponsoring organization. What areas of focus do they have? Where do they invest their money? Where's their money coming from? Look into all of those things. Another way to kind of figure out sort of what they're trying to do, if it's not clear, is look at previously funded fellows and their projects. What are they funding? That'll give you some hints as to what topics are exciting to them or helping them to further their mission. Also look into what they brag about. So sometimes fellowship organizations have pretty basic sites. They don't even have much information about why it's there. For example, when I first applied for the New York City Urban Fellows Program, which is a 1-year professional fellowship in New York City government for recent college graduates, when I looked at the website, I couldn't really understand. I didn't really know what the mission was. It just seemed like, okay, great, they're going to get some people working in 25 new employees in government. But I did read in a press release that the director was bragging about how 80% of the fellows go on to work in New York City government long term. And then that lit off a light bulb in my head. And I thought, oh, the mission is that they want to get recent college graduates into this fellowship program so that they'll commit and be working in the city and contributing to the city long term, probably because they have a lot of people retiring and it's probably getting an older age population in their employees. So look at what they brag about. If you can't figure out what the mission is, look all around, investigate. And then, so when I prepared my New York City Urban Fellowship application, I said in there, and this was true at the time, that I wanted to work in New York City government long term. And so out of hundreds of applicants that they got from people who are probably pretty similar, if not better than I was in terms of my resume, I think that made me stand out because I had really keyed in on their mission. They didn't want people to work there for a year and then go to another state for grad school, even though people do that. They didn't want people to go there and then work in another field. That was their mission. So just figure out what that is so you can make sure you mention that in your application. Secondly is to go niche. You can propose a really narrow research topic or express a highly specific career goal. The reason I recommend doing this and being really, really specific and narrow is that the more specific and narrow your project proposal, the more memorable and viable it is. So for example, when I went to New Zealand and I had to propose a project, I was kind of generally interested in children in disasters. I just worked in a congressional committee. So there's a lot of kind of broad topics I could have done. I could have looked at how do schools prepare for disasters? What kind of government policies are there for education? But those are really, really broad. And I don't, who even knows what the research question would have been that could have been completed in 7 months. So I talked to the ministry there and I got really specific. I asked them, what sort of topics do you need help with? What sort of programs or research are you working on in this field of children in disasters, just overall? And they said, well, we have a curricular program in schools that's never been evaluated. We just started it 2 years ago. And that to me was like, that's a perfect project. I'll propose to evaluate this one curricular program. And then the results of that will be what I use to go back to the US and show them, how this works and sort of the impact of it. So it was super, super specific. I was going to evaluate one program. I wasn't going to try to do this big overarching general project. So that made it really, I think, memorable, specific, and also the narrow focus instills the confidence that you're going to be successful in this short-term fellowship. So feasibility is a huge issue. It doesn't matter how good your resume is or your references. If your project proposal is not feasible or it raises a lot of questions like, can you actually finish this project in this time period? Do you have the resources? Especially if you're going to a foreign country and you're going to be a foreigner, maybe working in a different language or, trying to get access to people that you have no relationship with. The feasibility of the project is one of the really key things that people miss. They think, well, no, I'm going to do this really aspirational, huge idea, thinking that it just sounds really great and really impactful. And they realize that they just completely shot their application because it's just not feasible. So if you have a really narrow focus and subject in your project or your research, it's much easier to show that feasibility and show that you'll be successful. Keep in mind, no matter how narrow you go, once you get on the fellowship, you can always go broader in practice. Obviously, you can always add more to your project, but also don't say you're going to do 4, 5, 6 different things during your fellowship. Again, it shoots you in the foot. It doesn't make you sound like a go-getter. It actually makes you sound like you're not aware of that is way too much work for that period, and then it's probably likely you're not going to be successful. Also, the same thing, you might be applying for a fellowship maybe that's professional in nature and it doesn't have a research or project component to it. I also say that it's good to propose a highly specific career goal so that the fellowship organization can see how this fellowship fits in with that goal and fits in with your it's something that you need to do in order to achieve the goal. So for example, you could say broadly, I really want to do this fellowship in international development because I just want to work in international development. It's too vague. It's not clear why. What do you want to do? So be really specific. Mention an organization that would be your dream job. Mention a specific title or role. Mention specific skills that you hope to gain that will help you to be a scholar, a journalist, a project manager. The more specific you are, the better. And this goes the same too if you're going to use this fellowship to do dissertation research, to finish a graduate degree. Be really specific, and it helps you to be more memorable and more feasible. The next number 3 ties in a little bit with the last slide, which is storytell. Make the fellowship the hero in your story. So when you're telling, your application is actually a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the beginning of your story is your background, everything you've kind of done up until now. This is the preparation for your career goal. The end of the story is the achievement in the future of your highly specific career goal. And then the middle of the story, which is the most important part, is the undertaking of the fellowship. And really what you want to convey is that without this fellowship, your very highly specific career goal may not be achieved. So you want to be really sure that you show them how you're going to leverage the unique kind of aspects of the fellowship that are going to help you achieve your goal. So whether that's meeting specific people in your industry, getting really specific skills, maybe you're finishing a writing project or a book. There could be any number of things, even just getting language and cultural experience, achieving your dissertation research, whatever that is. Make it clear that without the fellowship, your goal may not be achieved because there isn't really any other opportunities that would allow you to do that thing. That will help you to make a really strong story. A lot of fellowship organizations will get applications that are really kind of general in nature. Sure, I'm going to get all these skills. It's going to be great. It'd be really prestigious for me. And it's just not compelling enough. That's what everybody's going to say. So be the person that makes it really clear why this fellowship is your hero and why there is nothing else like it. Another tip I give is to add urgency to your application. Explain why you need this fellowship or funding opportunity right now. So a couple ways that you can do, and then let me explain this too. So a lot of fellowship organizations get way more qualified applicants than they have opportunities. And so often when it comes down to them selecting between, 2 candidates, they're going to be selecting you based on really minor differences in the quality of your applications. So if you don't get a fellowship, it wasn't because you weren't qualified. Often it was because, you were just up against other really competitive candidates and they had to make some hard choices. So one way you can get an edge over that other candidate is to have a bit of urgency in your application, which means that you need to do the fellowship now. And if you can't do it later. You can't do it in 2 years. You can't do it in 5 years because of the nature of what you're proposing. So one could be that you're studying what I call a fleeting phenomenon. So maybe you're looking at something like the impact of a recent disaster on a community, the impact of the passing of legislation that just happened. Even if you're looking at something, anything that's current event related could be fleeting. So think about that. Also, something that might be relevant is even just the timing of your graduate degree. If you are a doctoral student, you only have a certain period of time to finish your research. So it might be that, this year, my third year, my fourth year, I'm really doing my field research in Africa. I'm doing my survey research in Chicago with this community. And so that's an urgency. You can't not do that year, right? You can't put it off a year. So that's another kind of urgency. Other ways, if maybe you're doing a research project that's about something in history or isn't a fleeting phenomenon. Another thing you could look into to add to your application is maybe there's a one-time conference or event that's happening during the fellowship period, and this fellowship would allow you to attend. So again, this would be a missed opportunity if you don't get the fellowship. And also there's other things like, let's say you're doing a fellowship before starting graduate school or your next degree. And let's say you need to get language skills or get cultural competence, maybe get some research experience that will help strengthen your application for graduate school, which is immediately happening after the fellowship. So always think about, what can I add that's urgent to give me that little edge? It's not absolutely necessary to have urgency. It's not going to necessarily mean you will or won't get it. It's just something that can give you a little more focus on your application. Finally, my last one is an important one, is speak to 3 former fellows. I've spoken to thousands of fellowship winners over the years because we've done interviews on ProFellow with fellowship winners about their experience. And we always ask them, what do you think made your fellowship application stand out? So in talking to all of these fellows, I found a key difference between people who won and people who didn't. Winners spoke to former fellows. So think about it. Who else can give you that insider knowledge about what they're going to ask you in the interview, or what they think they're looking for in candidates that hasn't been expressed on a website or in an info session, or even tell you, hey, you were a winner. What do you think made your application stand out? What do you think made your difference? Talking to former fellows, they are the experts at the fellowship and winning the fellowship. So we have a lot of broad tips on ProFellow about how to strengthen your application. The former fellows, though, are key. And if you want to get personal introductions to a fellow, there's a couple ways you can do that. One, you can just ask the fellowship organization, do you have any ambassadors or former fellows that I could speak to about the opportunity? They may or may not be willing to give out contact information to fellows. There's no harm in asking. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, it might give you brownie points. But if you can't get it from the fellowship organization, you can also try a LinkedIn advanced search. So put in the name of the award into your LinkedIn profile, the search bar, and see who comes up that's a first connection, second connection. If they're a second connection, that means you're not directly connected to them, but you are connected to someone who can introduce you. You can also ask your university if they know of alumni who have been on the fellowship that they can connect you to. So you can ask the career office or the fellowship office. Do a Google search. You might find the person's name, but you don't find their contact information. Then, if you say, oh, wait, I saw this Harvard alum got this Radcliffe Award, then contact the career fellowship office and ask them if they are able to connect you with that person. Also, if you find that person on Google, look for them in LinkedIn, see if you're connected to them directly. They may or may not have the award on their profile, so sometimes it doesn't show up. So those are just some kind of ways. And keep in mind, it might be hard to find 3, but if you can find just 1 and get connected to them, they can probably introduce you to 2 or 3 other people as well. So make sure you do that. And then keep your conversations with these folks brief. Like everyone, they're busy and they're doing you a favor. So be super polite, be brief, have your questions ready, and make sure you make the most of that conversation. Ask them about interviews, ask them about what made them stand out, ask them about the mission of the organization, what they're looking for. That will give you all that insider information that other candidates will not have. Okay, I'm going to throw in a couple bonus secrets. One is that you should create templates for your recommendation letters. So when you ask people for recommendation letters, get the grunt work out of the way. Create the Word doc or the Google Doc that has, who it's addressed to, and that information, the dear so-and-so, so they don't have to dig that up. And then also give them specific bullet points of things that they can include in the letters. So you don't write the letter for them, but you definitely want to give them, if they say referees should speak to your leadership experience, even if your referee knows you really well, give them some specific bullet points to include in the letter. And then also, this is a good exercise that for each reference, you give them a different list of bullet points so that the letters can cover all of the amazing things in your background, and you have a really robust and holistic view from both your application and your recommendation letters. Also, before you interview, practice your pitch. You're going to have to explain, well, why are you applying? Tell us about yourself. Why are you applying? So you want to pitch as briefly as you can, the project and sort of what your 2 to 5 year career goal or project goal is. And it's good to practice that because in the interviews too, especially a lot of fellowship interviews, you're going to be asked by the other candidates who are there, what are you doing? And if you're really long-winded and you're not expressing yourself clearly, it's going to be a huge, downside to how well you do in the interviews. Finally, I want you to get into a winner's mindset. A lot of people are really intimidated by the fellowship process, the application process. You have to believe you're going to win this thing to be successful. And I'll tell you what, there's all sorts of people I know who are first-generation college students, immigrants, people who had big career breaks, all sorts of things, who have won fellowships because they were persistent and they got into a winner's mindset. Okay, so you got to have the hope that you're going to believe to be able to achieve it. If you really don't believe it, or deep down you're sort of not really thinking you're going to get this thing, you won't win because it actually works against you, that negative mindset. So you may or may not, you might have a rejection from a fellowship. But don't let that knock you down from applying to that one or another award. I'll tell you, the people who win one award, they go on to win more. So it's just staying persistent. And actually, the last time we did this talk, we had someone who was on the Harvard webinar said, I won a fellowship after using ProFellow's tips, who had taken a 10-year career break to raise children. And she applied to several fellowships and she got into one hosted by the United Nations. So even though she had a career break, even though she felt, she was really persistent, put her all, used our application tips, and she won. And that set off her new career track post raising family. So just to get back to it, we have go to ProFellow. You can go to the sign up button or the get started to create your profile, get into the database. Make sure that you'll be on, if you sign up, we're going to have a new form where it just signs you up automatically for the mailing list. But if it's not up yet, just make sure you check that in your profile. And also we'll be emailing. We have all sorts of courses on personal statements, interviews. I just did one on resumes. So you'll get announcements about those and tips from former fellows. You'll get all of those through ProFellow. Also, we have this platform called ProFellow Academy, which is my sort of private platform where I give application advice, I answer questions, I help people find fellowships. I'm on this thing all the time. I just posted a post yesterday about someone asked me in office hours, how do I get started in creating an academic publication record? So I wrote a post on that. So when people ask questions, if I answer it for one person, I try to create a post so that everyone can benefit from it. So get in there as well. That's at profellow.mn.co. It has a different login process than ProFellow, so just keep that in mind. And here's the thing, if you get with us, ProFellow readers win fellowships. These are just a few of the people that have won fellowships that they discovered through ProFellow or through some of my courses. This is just a few. So I really encourage you. We'd love to have you. And, I hope to see you join ProFellow, get in ProFellow Academy, and maybe even see you in one of my upcoming workshops. So we've got 10 minutes. Can we open up the floor to questions?
Yes, that would be great. Thanks so much, Vicki, for all the helpful information that you shared so far. And we are going to take questions now. So for anyone who hasn't already typed a question and has one, please do so now. So first question, Vicki, is for someone who's wondering, in terms of the PhD and applying for fellowships, for funding for that, they're wondering, they thought that you already get funded when you are accepted to a PhD program. So how does that work with funding from your program that you're accepted to versus applying for fellowships that you can find on ProFellow?
Oh, yes. I actually, this is going to be launching in the next day or two. So if you sign up for ProFellow, I have a directory that I'm about to give out that's a directory of more than 500 fully funded PhD programs. So let me explain what that is. When you do your PhD, there are programs that are fully funded, which means that they give all accepted students to the program a full funding package, which means they cover your annual tuition and they give you an annual living stipend. It's usually not huge. It could be anywhere from like $10,000 to $40,000 per year. And usually what you're coming in and you're going to be an assistant. They call it an assistantship or a studentship. But that allows you to be fully funded, and you can complete your PhD without taking on any additional debt. Now, the thing is, not all PhD programs are fully funded. Some fund just a few students, some fund no students. So you really have to go out and find the programs that are fully funded. And just from my own experience, also having received full funding myself for my PhD, I would say I recommend just applying exclusively to fully funded fellowships. Because if you fully funded programs, because if you get into a program that does not offer funding, then you're on the hook for 5 to 6 years of tuition and living expenses. And it's very hard for people who don't have funding to complete their PhD because of that. I mean, unless you have, some sort of scholarship from somewhere else. There are a number of external doctoral fellowships that you can apply to that are, sponsored by nonprofits, foundations, government agencies that you can apply for. These are going to be, they're very competitive. They don't give that many awards. They're definitely worth applying to because it can make you a better candidate if you're trying to get into a really top school. But there are fewer awards. So I would just say, go for the fully funded programs so that you know that you have a funding guarantee if you get accepted, and really put all your eggs in that basket. And let me just show you on ProFellow, we have an article that's called How to Fully Fund Your PhD. And if you're on kind of our article, if you click articles, we have it linked over here on the side, How to Fully Fund Your PhD, under popular posts. And in this list, we've got, this is an article about this subject. And here we've got all of these lists of fully funded PhD programs in different disciplines. We even have some lists of fully funded master's programs for anyone that's, I think most of you are doing your master's now, but there's those as well. But the directory, which I'm about to launch in just a day or two here, is basically a culmination of all of these articles in one PDF. So hopefully if you're on the mailing list, you'll see that and you'll be able to download that for free. Now, these lists too, I should say, are not exhaustive. So I also teach people about how to find fully funded programs based on their research interests. Sometimes people really narrow themselves into certain disciplines and don't realize that there's certain research topics that you can do in a wide variety of disciplines. So let's say you're looking at educational leadership. You could do that in education. You could do it in leadership. You could do it in business. You could do it in even policy. You're not really limited by discipline when you have a certain research topic in mind. So I do talk a lot about this. So if you get on the mailing list, get the directory, you'll get more content from me directly about fully funded programs.
Great, thanks, Vicki. Our next question is, what advice or tips do you have for aspiring fellowship applicants dealing with physical disabilities?
Oh, physical disabilities. Well, I would say, you're definitely not at any sort of disadvantage for applying. And if anything, it's funny, I was just at the fellowship, there's an Impact Fellowship Summit that's in DC for a lot of the fellowship organizations, and a lot of them are they want more people with various disabilities to apply because, that's kind of, I think, a barrier. A lot of applicants are not applying for fellowships because of this perception that they're not going to be competitive. So fellowship organizations want you to apply, and they should be willing to accommodate you in any way possible to make it, to be able to go. We interviewed a Fulbright winner who went to Italy, who was blind, and Fulbright helped her to get all the accommodations that she needed. She was going to be in a foreign country and living in a new situation. So I think the fellowship organizations, hopefully, most of them would be really accommodating and help you. If you've never traveled, I would think that what's great about the fellowship is, unlike a job or a volunteer opportunity, they will have more resources to help you get the accommodations that you need. So I would strongly encourage you to apply. They're looking for people like you.
Great, thank you, Vicki. And we had a question that was about doing that keyword search.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have to match exactly? So, for example, short term, does it have to have a hyphen?
Yeah, it would have to. Yes, it would. So short term, just make sure that you could try it two different ways. If you said, "Oh, I'm not sure," short term is how we tag it with the little dash. I'm sure there's some. There might be some that don't have the dash that are. But see, that's showing up. Yeah, but you do have to spell it. Yeah, see, it doesn't show up without the dash. But yeah, for example, like if you were looking for something, let's see, things that are spelled differently, like the word behavior. I was just thinking to myself, oh, behavior is spelled two different ways depending on if you're American English or UK English. So it could be that there's a fellowship in the UK in behavior that is spelling it differently. So you might have to try a few different spellings of the same thing. I don't know. See, I guess that didn't work. But yeah, try a few different spellings, but you do need to do it exact.
Great. Thanks, Vicki. Next question is, could you review again, you had talked about the definition of a fellowship at the beginning of the webinar, and someone had a clarifying question there that they're wondering if a fellowship could be described as a type of job that would help you pay for your current program. So if they're an extension school student, could they also do a fellowship at the same time that would help pay for that? Could you just kind of maybe clarify that definition a little bit or review it again?
Oh, sure. I think that would be an academic fellowship. So if you're looking for funding for tuition, then you would want to look in, if you're at like the master's level, look for graduate study. If you're at the doctoral level, look for doctoral study. I will say that it is very challenging to find funding for things like certificate programs or, I just want to take 5 credits of this that's not connected to a degree. So there is less funding for that. I do encourage people to, get creative with some of these things. You might get a summer research grant that would help pay for your tuition, but it's really toward the purpose of you doing research. So yeah, for the extension school, is that some folks there are not actually pursuing a full degree? Is it just certificates
Correct.
As well?
Yeah,
Right.
It's a range.
It's a range, so, yeah. It can be a little hard to find funding to fund a certificate. Most of the fellowships that I'm aware of are funding, graduate, kind of a full graduate degree or a full doctoral degree. However, I do know it's still worthwhile to take a look undergraduate study. I know that like AAUW, which is for women, they have like career development grants. And so for these, it's career development grants are $2,000 to $12,000. And it can be put toward a master's degree, bachelor's degree, certification program, specialized training. There's also some fellowships that result in a certificate. So you'd have to do it for their certificate. Spelled it wrong. So some of these result in a certificate. For example, we just added this the other day, the Buell Early Childhood Leadership Program. This is a fully funded graduate certificate at the University of Colorado. Dog Tag, they do a certificate in business administration from Georgetown. So there's a couple like that. So I would look into those, but I would look under graduate study for that, just skim through, take the time to skim through and see if it might fund it.
Great. And we're just about at 2 o'clock here, so I'll just take one last quick question here. Someone's wondering, should you apply for multiple fellowships at the same time?
Sure. I mean, there's no reason why you can't. I myself, when I was applying for professional fellowships, I really was only doing one at a time. But sometimes, for example, the German Chancellor Fellowship, there's a very similar fellowship called the Robert Bosch Fellowship. So some people apply to both. They're both like one-year fellowships in Germany. So you definitely can do more than one at a time. It's just make sure you put the time aside to put the effort into the applications. If you're trying to apply to 5, 6, 10 fellowships, your applications may suffer because you're not able to focus the time and attention to do all the things I told you, like investigate the mission, talk to fellows, that sort of thing. So it's really a trade-off of, it might be a trade-off of quality when you try to do a lot of quantity. So, but there's no reason you can't. I mean, it's really up to your personal focus and time.
Great. Well, we are at our end time here, so I want to thank you, Vicki, so much for all the great information and advice that you shared, and thanks for your great presentation. And I also want to thank all of our participants today. Thanks so much for spending your time with us today and for all your great questions.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Vicki, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.